Right. I'm glad I'm going to study biomedicine, seeing this topic. I'm going to tell you what's the problem, right? The problem is that we are on the verge of making significant scientific discoveries that enable us to understand the way the human mind works in ways never seen before. We see this as an obvious point where we need to make decisions. How we're going to address the use of this knowledge. How we're going to address the use of these technologies. We say profit incentives in here are a no-go, ladies and gentlemen. These are the utter defeat and the devil of all cause. The obvious plan, what we're going to say is we're only going to allow for medical purposes, for like curing specific patients, for discovering diseases and so forth, all the neuroimaging technologies. What are neuroimaging technologies? Basically PET scans, what we currently already have, but all the future possibilities as well, like dissecting the human brain and seeing how the electrons move and so forth. The amazing advances that are being made at Duke University by scientists. We see these are the potential causes that we currently have. I'm going to talk about 3 reasons why this proposition stands. First of all, how neuroimaging is so powerful that this does not fall under any sort of criteria of the profit and of the free market. Secondly, why the state must protect autonomy in these cases, the personal autonomy, the right to make decisions to utmost degree. Thirdly, about competition, how we find that this is going to undermine competition in all different areas of research. And lastly, Anna will talk about privacy, why we need to keep some information confidential. First of all, why neuroimaging is so powerful. I think I need to address the point, what is neuroimaging, because we're largely not a scientific group of people, we're debaters. We think that, firstly, the idea is that you go and discover which neural pathways are active, then which neural pathways are involved in making specific decisions. And this is like the physics of brain, the way the electrons move, the way they actually inflict responses to each other, and so forth. We say this is the likelihood of people making certain types of decisions and the sorts of decisions they are likely to make. We say in this case, it's obvious neuroimaging allows us the access to the whole concept of what are the person's preferences. We see this as neuroimaging technologies. Now, this sort of exploitation, what we see, is dreadful because of the profit incentive. Because when you are in a free market and when you have a profit incentive, what you want to do is you want to make, obviously, the most possible profit. And we see this leads to exploitations, it leads to dire exploitation of these resources. We already see it in this environmentalist claim where we dare to say that we must protect the environment, because if we would leave it without any sort of regulation, the environment on itself would be exploited to such degrees that humanity cannot survive for a long time. We say the idea here is, why the manipulation is so harmful is how it allows companies to use this for their product placement, for the commercials that they're going to make. We see this as like the analogous to subliminal messaging, where you can show like a Coca-Cola advertisement after every 33 frames, and then people will scientifically prove and experiments made, people are more likely to go and buy Coca-Cola after that movie. We see this as the sort of things that we need to ban. We've already banned subliminal messaging, no thank you. And we're saying neuroimaging is just one of sort of those, and we should address the very same caution in here. Because ultimately what it says is that firms and companies are given access and control over the decisions that people make. By knowing the specific preferences, we know how marketing works in general, we have the access that we can actually allocate our research and our advertising to specific groups of people. We say in here is the obvious loss that the people are unable to make decisions and make neutral decisions on themselves. Yes?
If the inner workings of the human mind are as private as you claim, why should people agree to let this technology be used in them?
If they agree for medical purposes, we think it's fine, and we are banning the access of all those medical data and so forth, and even the scanning of that. We find if any company ever gets the access to that, they should be obviously banned or severely damaged, or repercussions of the law. Second idea, why the state must protect the sort of personal autonomy, is what what we believe is the idea of being alive, the ability to make decisions. First of all, we're differentiated from animals by our ability to decide, by rational thinking and so forth. Secondly, and more importantly, is our awareness of these decision makings. We consider ourselves and complete individuals who are autonomous and whose values and preferences have sort of idea and maturing in the world. This is the point where we say that the state should protect these sort of autonomous ideas, because the individual against the company in this sort of situation is powerless. We say the very same logic applies when we protect people from organ donorship. We do not allow organ sales because people are powerless against the power of the free market, because of the simple financial incentives in there as well. We say the feeling of making these decisions is what grants life the sort of power it has, what makes life meaningful, what makes life worth living, the value of control over your own decisions. And that's the utmost reason why we have the state in the first place. I believe all the debaters get this on the grassroots level, because the state is there to protect the person's autonomy from being infringed upon by another person. You cannot come and beat me up because my autonomy supersedes this. And until you're doing harm, we say this is the sort of autonomy that we need to create. The sort of idea that stems from this is, we say, a drop in the responsibilities of people, the sort of consequentialist and earth-shattering logic that's going to appear. Because my decisions no more have any value, they're not useful, I am not autonomous, I'm simply a play toy for the big company.
Mm-hmm.
Third point, the competition. We find product placement and commercials in general undermine research and undermine development in all sorts of regions. We say the insurance of being attractive, not because of being better than anyone else, but because of being able to market your product better than anyone else, is the idea that we discuss, that we detest. Because the product placement is already is already banned because of that very same reason. Because companies will simply go and look further into the advertisement of their products, not essentially improving their products. And this would divert the sort of innovation that is necessary in all different groups. This is once again why we find commercial specifically harmful in here. So 3 reasons I've told you. Because of this, imaging is so powerful that it cannot be allowed in our society, because it undermines the ability to make decisions. Secondly, because the state is there to protect autonomy. And thirdly, because of the competition that we're going to undermine. First prop won this debate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry that I'm going to stand in front of you because I have 2 sheets of paper. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you with 2 points under which we believe that neuro-imaging technology can be used even if profit incentives are in place, because they provide benefits to individuals which are perfectly consistent with their autonomy and all the things that the first prop mentioned. But what we believe more fundamentally, and before I get to this point, what I want to get out of the way is a few points of rebuttal. First of all, we think a major point on basically what the entire case was about is that companies on the market are able to exploit marketing techniques when they know how people think. This might be true, but I think that they're also placing an unreasonable burden on our side, right? As the motion reads, we don't have to prove that this neuro-imaging technology is fine in the marketing industry, right? We think this is perfectly fine, and we agree with that it might undermine competition, and you might ban it in this case. The only thing that we have to prove is that in some cases, where profit incentives are in place, neurotechnology can be used and is actually beneficial for the society. So basically, what we think about is the first and the third point that the first prop brought out. All the idea why it is powerful, yes, we agree, it is quite powerful. It can do wonderful things. It can also do very bad things when placed in bad hands. And the point about competition, yes, we think it undermines competition, and therefore we would not allow companies to use it. Right? The second point that they had on autonomy and consent, we think that the state has no right to say to any individual what exactly, no thank you, he or she can do with his or her body, right? We think each individual has the supreme authority over their own body. We think this is a fundamental right. No, thank you. That each individual should be able to exercise, especially as it comes to such delicate matters as you know, an individual's workings of the mind, the private sphere, and everything that pertains to it. Right? So basically, what we think, no, thank you, is that there are two general cases in which neuroimaging technology, and Paul is going to extend on the third one, can be used for profit incentives. First of all, we think that it can be used in the field of psychology, in the people's pursuit of identity. We want people knowing better who they are and what their actions are based upon, right? Secondly, we believe that this further scientific discovery and is sort of akin to clinical trials, right? And thirdly, what Paul is going to expand on is how this can be used in criminology and how it can help create more secure societies, and we also help in that way. Go.
Okay, all of the points you just mentioned are not profit incentives, because the police does not work for profit, because the psychologists don't work for profit, because they work for medical health care.
I'm going to explain how they are. Okay, so the first point, psychology. Let's get the profit-based definition stuff out of the way, right? When we have a private psychology practice in place that takes in people who come to the psychologist and pay the psychologist, right? Then there is a profit incentive in place. There is a competition between such clinics. Each of them wants to have the most customers and therefore has to provide the best service. And we think, no, thank you, that it is completely fine when neuroimaging technology is used in providing the service. Because what we think and what we agree with on what Martin said is that people really have sort of a vague understanding of what reality is, right? We sort of have some sort of perception of it, but we don't exactly know what the causes of our actions are and what particular stimuli in certain circumstances make us act the way we do act, right? We think that in general, if we allow psychologists to use neuroimaging technology, it immensely contributes to an individual's pursuit of identity. We think it is fundamental to every individual to know to the best extent who he or she is and how he or she can function the most efficiently in a society, right? For an example, if people are experiencing social anxiety and they would rather avoid some situations, but they're not particularly sure what the cause of anxiety is, the neuroimaging technology, as Martin already explained in very much detail, that help us identify what the causes of particular illnesses or diseases are, or some sort of psychological problems, and we can either fix it or we can help the individuals prevent those situations. In general, what we think is that it's a fundamental right for any individual to embark on his or her own pursuit of identity, and we also believe by individuals knowing how to function the best in a society, like which social situations to enter and how to act in those situations. Well, we believe that this makes individuals operate, no thank you, within societies more efficiently, and therefore we think that even if it is used in a profit-based incentive scenario, in general, it is still beneficial, right? So that was the first point. Second point, what we think is about how it furthers scientific discovery, right? This is also a profit-based incentive, something that Martin seems to disagree with, right? We say that all the pharmaceutical companies, or all companies who currently do clinical trials, so do these trials to get some drugs from the market and make profit, right? It's a very clear profit incentive. I don't understand what you're not understanding. So essentially, what we think is that, as they already explained, and as we also agree with, this is an immense discovery. It promotes scientific discovery and expands the sphere of science. It sort of introduces possibilities that have never been there before. And we think it is perfectly fine if, for example, an individual consents for this technology to be used in his or her, because it is their own private sphere, right? It is like their inner workings of the mind. The only reason why it is private is because they themselves can decide with whom they share it with. Right? We think this is a fundamental one. And we also think that if they believe that money is the right incentive from there to share the inner workings of the mind, then we think that this is perfectly fine, and we think that organ donorship on the same grounds perhaps should be allowed as well. So in general, what we think is that if further scientific discovery, and individuals can also sort of let this imaging technology be used in them even for money, we think the profit incentives from both sides will also find, and the scientific discovery that we will get from it is really, really good for all societies. So basically what we've brought to you is that there are a number of cases, a vast number of cases where we should never use this technology. But we brought to you 2 cases, and Paul will add another, where this technology can be particularly useful. And more fundamentally, we think, it helps people understand who they are, which is an immense benefit. It helps people function more efficiently in societies, it promotes science, and does a lot of other good things. So for all of those reasons, I'm extremely happy to oppose.
Thank Robert for his speech and invite Anna Caroline to continue the case of the government.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are three constructive points I would like to discuss. The first is this idea of privacy and my right to be sure that no one else knows why I make decisions and which decisions I make. I am secondly going to talk to you about why people cannot consent to anything they like, because sometimes they consent other people to that, and also because sometimes they are stupid and do not think of the choices and they cannot be unmade. Thirdly, I'm going to talk about why the human mind needs to be a mystery, and I'm going to extend the ideas of Martin. But before that, few points of rebuttal. Firstly, about this idea of private motives. We say, ladies and gentlemen, that if you're a private company that wants to come up with a drug, we said at the point where we talk about medical research, we said that when it's done in the interest of finding a cure, we're not against it. But we are saying, just to be clear on the model and just not to screw up the debate, fine, we'll ban the commercial pharmaceutical research as well. I think we have good enough companies and universities to deal with such research through government funding. And we said that a lot of the times pharmaceutical countries do get money from the government to actually incentivize medical research. And we'll just say, we'll buy the bloody scientists from these private researchers and make our own good science, and we think that's not the issue of the debate. And we also think that that does not necessarily mean that for the profit motive it means that it always can't be a company, right? It just means that it cannot be used to make profit out of people and out of people's choices, and hence we say this definition is justified. And last but not least, I think this opposition avoided our best case, right? They tried to say sometimes private companies are also good, but they never took on the worst case, and we think in order to win, at least the second opposition should do that. Now, then they said that Paul is going to talk about criminology, and because we want to win this debate, I'm just going to rebut it before they present it. We are going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that firstly, criminology is not an issue of profit, and hence it does not fall under this debate. But even if it did, ladies and gentlemen, even if there is a likelihood in my brain that I'm able to commit a crime because I hate a person, law can never take this into account, because we have presumption of innocence and all the other mechanisms that provide us with some sort of mind crimes, ladies and gentlemen. Until I have with absolute certainty committed that crime, ladies and gentlemen, we can never prosecute you, because we have always determined the state is too powerful agent and the error of a mistake is too costly to do that. So we say that this criminology point falls because, ladies and gentlemen, we can never make judgments based on what is inside people's heads, because it might change what they do later. Now, moving on to my constructive points, and it's an idea about privacy. Ladies and gentlemen, what is privacy? It's control over the information about myself, personal information about what I do, how I do it, and why I do it, ladies and gentlemen. The most important thing about this, that in order for me to have privacy, this idea that I can share information if I want, is also the presumption that I don't have to share this information if I don't want to, ladies and gentlemen. And if companies get a hold of how I make decisions, ladies and gentlemen, I am no longer in control of deciding sometimes that I don't want to know that probably my brain says I want to buy really weird dildos, and then, well, that would probably undermine me because I would feel embarrassed, ladies and gentlemen. And we secondly say, ladies and gentlemen, that if this technology is available, even if companies don't know my ideas, they will start perceiving that I probably bought this because I have something in my brain, and that means there will be perception that I am that kind of information, and that's why I'm making this kind of decision. And we said that's really bad for people who maybe do not want to come out of closets with their decision. And we said that this sort of privacy is fundamental to human liberty, and hence we should not allow people to make that sort of decisions. And now moving on to this idea, or bringing a good analogy. We say, for example, that when we have government databases about very personal information and statistics that we have on people, we do not give that to private companies to use, because we do want people to be in power and to make decisions however they wish to and however they want to. But moving on to an even more important idea, which I think is kind of the essence of this debate a bit later, which is this idea of whether you can consent to this. We firstly say the reason why you, can't consent to a company and give your information to a company is because the fact that I will look at your brain and find out how it works. I will find out general information about how all of our brains work, right? We say that even if this information is not absolute, by looking into the mind of a woman, for example, and looking how I am as a woman, I can kind of make some sort of very good ideas about how other women would think who have the same circumstances, right? Which means that me giving out information about myself will also mean that we will know information about other very similar people that did not consent to this, ladies and gentlemen. And we say that that's bad. Secondly, once I have given up this information, these neurons in my body that will not change, what will happen, ladies and gentlemen, is that I can never take this back, right? I can never say that please do not use my information because the company already has that and is obviously likely to use that, and we say that our inability to prohibit them would also mean that they can use that. And why is this bad? Is because it might be inherent harm to how I perceive the world and how I think I buy. And we say that, for example, we don't allow people to kill themselves. We stop them when we put them into mental institutions because we believe that the harm that they're doing to themselves is so fundamental. We say that the same problem with drugs, because it alters your mind in a way that you can never go back. And we say that in this case you consent to something that you can never go back to, because once this knowledge is out, this knowledge is always out. And we say, yes.
Would you agree that it is possible to change this decision making, like in the long-term perspective, and at the same time have profits?
Yeah, that's you mean decision making for the individual in their brain?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now you're getting me my third point. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that sometimes I might make a decision against these neurons, right? I think it is very highly improbable, but it might be possible because, well, human mind is a mystery. But the problem is that once we start saying that there is something in your brain that makes you do something else, you always think you're going to decide this way. You think you've given up hope. They said, oh, we're going to look into our minds and say, I am an aggressive person, hence I will always speak violently in a phylum, right? But we say, ladies and gentlemen, that sometimes I might make the decision that I will speak in a more calm way. But once I know this knowledge is out, the neurons in my brain are making me speak aggressively, I will never even think about the other alternative, and I will never change my mind and choose something else. Which means that if I know that I'm a person who will probably commit a crime, I will always commit a crime because I think I do not have a free choice and that my brain is functioned to think in that way. And that is why we need to keep the mystery of a human mind, because people would have the ability to make choices even though they're mostly highly improbable or out of order. So what have I told you? I've told you that this understanding of how I give my information out to people needs to be only under my control and not under the control of others. I've told you how we cannot consent to this because then we consent other people to it and it will be a grave consequence for me and hence we would not allow it as slavery. And thirdly, I've said it undermines free choice. For these points, I think we win this debate. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we think that the more you know about yourself, the better your decisions will be. We think that the more the society knows about how we work and how the human mind, etc., works and how it perceives things, the better we are at helping society, the better we are at evolving, and that is exactly what science in the long run is trying to do, etc. anyway. It's trying to make life for us better, and we see that we're doing it with this plan. Now, pretty much, I will have 2 points of rebuttal to what Anna said, because she pretty much only talked about 2 new things. And then I will talk about criminology and about other solutions that I can bring out, even though Anna thinks she knows what I will be talking about. She actually doesn't. Okay? Again, neurotransmitters kind of went wrong in this case. So, let's go on to the points of rebuttal first of all. So first of all, we had this idea that privacy, right? That we cannot consent to give this type of information that we have in our brain, right, to these companies, because other people might have the same type of information, right, and then we will be infringing upon their rights to be kept secret about this, right? We're saying that, first of all, there's a few things wrong with this. Even currently, right, if I die, right, I can give my body to research, right? I can also better give my body to research, which also means that all these things that people can actually do with this research can also go on and actually, in some way
infringe upon the so-called rights of other individuals, right?
Sure.
We're saying that we can use this, and the way that we do use this is for profit, right? And I mean not for profit, but for benefit. We're using these things, we're using these things for benefit because that's just how science works, right? We're trying to find these things out, and we're trying to find these people, and they may have some kind of things that are similar among all people. They may really have, characteristics that some people have that for example, once I look into Ronald's head, I know exactly what's going on in Anna's head, and then we're saying that's a good thing, right? Because in some places, we're saying that this actually can be beneficial, this can solve problems, but I'll talk a little bit more about on the third point. Secondly, Anna herself also said that people can actually think differently. And yes, people do think differently. If we're talking about neural pathways, I'm not actually, a scientist, etc., but I'm pretty sure that all of these things work in very different ways. There might be like a common mechanism to how they work. And if we all know this common mechanism, then through that, if we all know that we know it, right? If we all know what is actually going on, that is what is really beneficial. That is what will bring science to a new level. That is what we can actually use to make new inventions, to actually find out new things in general, right?
Oh.
We're saying that we will never know exactly that if I look into Ronald's head, I will not know exactly what kind of, for example, Kellogg's Anna likes to eat in the mornings, right? Because we're saying that all of these people are different, all their characteristics are different, and the level of privacy that we're invading is not that great. We're saying that we're looking at the bigger framework, but we're not looking at small things that might that Anna came up and screamed about, saying, "Oh no, this is such horrible problem of privacy." Go on now.
Why we don't allow insurance companies to use sensitive health information to determine risks and determine cost of policy?
That is because under those insurance companies' rights, we're saying that we do not allow them to have it, to get this, because we've already implemented the idea that in case of medical research, right, or in case of medical doctors, they cannot give out this information. We've already had that in the very beginning. That's just a reason there, right? We're not saying it. We're saying that doesn't, apply in this case in general, because we're not using that in the same way. The reason we're using things in the insurance industry is not exactly to help people or to promote science. We're simply trying to insure them. They have a different motive, and because of this different motive, they have a different way that we allow them to do so. Okay, the second thing that I'd like to talk about is that is this whole third point that Anna discussed about, that if you know how your brain works, you will always work in the way that you know your brain works. That's what she pretty much said. Which means that, if, for example, if I find out, right, that I'm a pedophile in my brain, I will automatically think that, okay, I can just calm down and be a pedophile because that's fine. No, sit down, Anna, that's exactly what you said. So pretty much the problem we see here, right, is that Anna is thinking that all these people will automatically go out and do these things because they think that now they have some kind of legitimate cause to do so. First of all, they don't have a legitimate cause in the face of the law. They will still get locked up, they will, all of these things. We think that's, first of all, deterrence enough. And secondly, we think that if people know exactly what they might do in the future or what their tendencies are, they might change these things. Instead of actually going along with the flow, we think that people can actually work against the flow. And we think that that's very beneficial in these cases that we've been talking about. So we see that change is very important. And we're saying that the more you know about yourself, that's not going to mean that the less you try and control yourself. It's actually the opposite. You try and control yourself more. No, thank you, because you know and because you're better because you're better informed about what exactly it is that you can do. Wow, this debate is pretty confusing. But anyway, let's go on to my constructive material, which is this criminology idea, or pretty much the idea of how with using this technology we can actually get a better society. Now, first of all, I'd like to show exactly how we're talking about profit-based incentives in this case, because that might be kind of shaky, right? We're seeing that profit incentives, right, doesn't always mean that, are not always financial or numerical sums in that case. We're saying that if the government, right, allows, for example, for criminologists or for prisons, no, thank you, prisons to use this technology to find out, for example, whether or not criminals in what ways criminals do the crimes they actually do, right? So finding out these things. No, thank you. We're saying that these are also profit-based incentives because the state is profiting from this. If the state has less crime in itself, the state is profiting. It may not be a financial profit, but we can also contribute that to a financial profit, because if there's less crime, right, you're still saying that there's more. You're out of order. Thank God. Anyway, so that's how we see that there's actually profit incentive in this case as well. I mean, it may be vague to say that yes, the state will profit simply because there will be less crime and they'll have more people. But also, if there's less crime, right, there'll be less problems and there'll be less things that the state has to actually spend its money on, etc. In that way, we also see it's a profit-based incentive, right? In that way, we do think that it's profit-based incentive in both criminology and psychology, right? Because in both these cases, we're trying to look at exactly what these people have done wrong. What are the reasons, or what are the habitudes that cause these bad things that we see in society, and we're trying to fix them, right? If we understand why criminals, do these acts, right? If we understand what the probabilities are, then we can fix that, right? We can change that in our society, and we'll profit. We'll have a better society. We'll have less criminals, and the same thing that we can do in psychology, as Ronald discussed about. If we actually know why these types of different mentalities or different mindsets become alive. So for all these reasons, because we think that privacy isn't that big of a deal, because it's very vague in that perspective. Secondly, because we always do think that you can do and you can change yourself even if you know what exactly you should be doing. And thirdly, because a better society awaits, please oppose this motion. Thank you.